Yes, hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. And thank you so much for the introduction and the invitation to be here. I am joining from Stockholm, so it's great to be able to join virtually, even though I would have really liked to be there with you in person. So today I'd like to talk about some of our experiences and reflections on international partnerships for diversity interventions. This is based on two international partnership projects that we are currently involved in, both in India and Brazil, to support gender equity, particularly in science, technology, engineering, math, and medicine, or STEM fields, in higher education and research institutions. So a number of people from Manchester, India, and Brazil have contributed to the projects highlighted here today. And in particular, I'd like to mention the contributions of Diane Harris and Rachel Cowan as key members of the team. So the first project that I'd like to highlight is the GATI project, which stands for Gender Advancement Through Transforming Institutions in India. So GATI is a pilot partnership between British Council and the Department of Science and Technology, which is part of the government of India, as well as Advance HE. And the key aim of GATI is to develop and implement programs and action plans similar to the Athena Swan Charter in the UK, but locally contextualized to India, in part through the support of UK-India partnerships. So our team at the University of Manchester is one of the 5 UK higher education institutions paired with Indian higher education and research institutions to bring about improved gender equity through the GATI program. So the 5 institutions that we're working with for GATI are geographically spread and diverse in terms of both institution type and size. The second project I'd like to mention is the Women in Science project in Brazil, which is a similar scheme to GATI, but instead is built on UK-Brazil partnerships to support and improve gender equity initiatives in Brazil. The aim of the Women in Science scheme is to influence the development of institutional policies and practices which will enable progress towards achieving gender equality in STEM in higher education and research institutions in Brazil. So here, our team at Manchester is paired with 6 formal and 2 informal institutional partners, again, which are spread geographically and range from federal research institutes to very large universities in Sao Paulo. So our general approach to these projects has followed a similar framework to date, which is largely shaped by an approach suggested by British Council DST and Advance HE. So a first phase is related to starting out and how to approach a gender equality charter journey, followed by the self-assessment process, data collection and analysis, and action planning for success. So for each of these phases conducted to date, and I should be very clear that these projects are ongoing, we've hosted online sessions, which are a combination of presentations and discussion around the key topics with contributions both from our team at Manchester and from partners in India and in Brazil. So throughout the project, our team's role has really been to share some of the experiences that Manchester has had in developing Athena Swan applications and action plans to date, as well as sharing materials, resources, lessons learned, and good practice examples. So far, we are up to phase 3 with Brazil and phase 4 with India. So it's actually been really useful for us to learn from our experiences with the India GATI project to help better tweak our approach to the Brazil project, which started around 6 months later. Okay, so I'd like to share some reflections to date based on our experiences with these projects. So firstly, setting the scene is really important. Building connections and trust takes time. And this has been especially challenging in virtual environments with teams who have largely never met face-to-face, and also where gender equity or equality conversations could potentially be sensitive. Our approach to project setup and initial introductions has been very different for the India and Brazil projects. As with India, we were externally paired with our partner institutions, whereas in Brazil, we identified our own partners largely based on research networks that were already in place through academic colleagues. So this this kind of difference in setup meant that for the Brazil project, we had already started to communicate with our partners during the proposal stage and before the project even started. And that helped to streamline some of those initial relationship building stages. So for both of our projects, the Manchester team has involved people that have a wide range of experiences, from on-the-ground experience of working in India or Brazil, to experience with a wide range of Athena Swan and EDI roles, and also to relevant gender research experience. So we've really found that this breadth of experience within the Manchester team itself has been really helpful in bringing together a range of perspectives, and also helps to build relationships with our Indian and Brazilian counterparts. We have endeavored to take a listening first approach in meetings and open up the virtual floor to create space for input from all partners. So understanding of equity-related challenges has been a foundation of much of our discussions to date. Importantly, this is both data-driven where possible, but also related to lived experiences, especially with these projects that are starting out. There may not necessarily be much data already collected or available. So lived experiences are really important to help understand some of the challenges. From there, our teams and projects have begun attempts to look deeper and to identify commonalities, as well as to try to disentangle individual versus systemic challenges. And then with this initial understanding, we can then begin to identify potential steps forward. So much of our recent discussions have been around collecting data, starting to think about appropriate actions and how to present findings to make a difference. So in terms of approaches applied to different settings, a reasonably generic initial approach could be considered, which is essentially what we've done so far, going through kind of a process of what a project or partnership might involve, identifying direction and targets, sharing experiences with the Athena Swan Charter and the Manchester applications and impacts as one example, and then identifying next shared steps of the projects. Importantly, however, localized inputs and understanding are really needed in order to be able to contextualize and approach appropriately to a given setting. So particularly in the design and operation of short-term action plans, contextualized design is really critical. And even within the Indian and Brazil projects, which we're doing them separately, but we see a huge variability in departments, institutions, and in workplace and wider culture. So it's really important that interventions are appropriately identified according to that context. So this is really the stage we're at now, we're getting close to with both projects. So maybe we can report back at some point in the future on any further reflections on that. So more broadly, some of the wider challenges of implementing diversity interventions in different settings are related to capturing the range of experience and the needs for localized in-depth cultural understanding at multiple levels. Adequate support and resourcing for EDI work, such as these projects, is really needed, especially given the time and commitment needed and the challenges related to implementing systemic change. Despite these challenges, however, there are a number of very unique and powerful opportunities that arise from projects and partnerships like this. Programs like GATI and the Women in Science initiative create pathways for wider dissemination and awareness. For example, we hosted an International Women's Day event last month called Crossing Continents that had people involved from India, Brazil, and the UK. We're also discussing the development of policy-oriented outputs related to identifying issues and potential solutions. The increased networks are in and of themselves a great opportunity, as is the opportunity to kind of reflect and improve on our own approaches as we are on a shared journey towards the wider targets of gender equity. So with that, I'll bring it to a conclusion just by summarizing a few key points on our reflections to date. So first is that approaches need to be localized, even though there are certainly commonalities across settings and experiences, barriers, and possible steps towards improvement. Diversity in teams really helps to bring together a range of perspectives. And really very strong potential for benefit and change exist in bringing together international partnerships, such as these here, to work together towards both short and long-term gender equity improvements. So lastly, I'd like to thank, again, the individuals, institutions, and funders that have contributed to this work so far. And a big thanks to for the organizers for the invitation to join the session today. It's been really interesting to learn from the other speakers as well.